Hello, my name is Garrick, and I'm the program director here at OutCenter Southwest Michigan. And I'm excited to jump into some information today. We're going to be reviewing some of our very exciting resources here on our protocol page of our website. So that is outcenter.org/protocol. And the protocol, it is a really robust look at the work that we're doing in 2025, really looking in on the unholy trinity, talking about Christian nationalism, talking about toxic masculinity and white supremacy, and how those three things are kind of the foundation in which a lot of the negative things that we're seeing happen today, a lot of the negative executive orders, a lot of the attacks on LGBTQ people, a lot of that is being born out of these three kind of unholy belief systems, these three incredibly damaging, toxic, and pervasive beliefs that have been within our country's culture for, the founding of our nation, but have continued to have, different extents, different ramp ups, different influences throughout history. And again, we're seeing a resurgence of this influence in 2025. And so for us, we're looking at what a protocol for an inclusive future is. And in that protocol, it is the idea of inclusive communities, challenging that Christian nationalism. We are championing gender liberation and equality over toxic masculinity, and again, intersectionality over the ideas of white supremacy, and unifying us together in one fight as we continue to push forward together. So, with that, a lot of our work is revolving around activation. So what does activation mean? Activation means getting involved. That means anything from becoming a public advocate, going to your local meetings, which we're going to be talking about here in a second, to starting a book club, getting involved with your local party, getting involved with your local advocacy group, getting involved with us. There are so many opportunities right now, and we've been so deeply encouraged by the interest in activating socially, with creating social spaces and groups, activation politically, activation with advocacy, activation with just in the relationships that you have in your day-to-day life. And we've been so encouraged to see just the consistent activation that we've seen, the organizing that has happened locally, the folks that have stepped up, the organizations that are being formed, the groups that are being formed, the people who are creating social spaces, and all these great things. And I think we are just in such a primed moment for folks to get involved, locally. We keep saying it here, but there's not a lot of good that we're expecting to see happen nationally. We're just, not in that position right now to see a lot of good things happen on the national front. On the statewide front, we have a split house, and so we're in a situation where statewide, we're going to be able to hold some ground. We may be able to see some small things happen here or there, but what really can happen here in this moment is local action. There is so much that can be done locally. So much of our day-to-day lives are controlled at the local level, are controlled with our local politics and in our local meetings. And so that's what we're here to talk to you a little bit about today, which is how to attend some local meetings and get involved locally. So, getting involved, we have these really, kind of robust guides here to give you, again, your baseline information, how to get involved, and how to, again, engage in these public meetings. So here, let's go ahead and dive in here. Perfect. So here, let me just adjust my screen here. Hopefully this looks good on the recording. We'll see. There we go. Okay. So, a little bit of an overview. So attending a public meeting. Again, public meetings, be they city commission, they could be city, commission, council, it depends on what your city calls it. Your school board meetings, your library board meetings, your county commission meetings. There are so many meetings. I've been to a couple of parks meetings for different cities. There are county parks meetings. There are county planning meetings. There are so many things that you can get involved in that are, again, public meetings that you're able to attend. You're able to take notes. You're often able to ask questions or give public comments. These are really, really, again, important things that oftentimes go overlooked when you're thinking about like politics and how I can get involved and how I can make a difference. These are really, really important because these are things that us as individual community members can do to make a difference in our community through advocacy. Many of these public meetings go largely unattended by the communities that they represent. I remember I was going to a school board meeting, and it was, right around election time in 2022, and I was one of 3 people at that school board meeting. And then some elections changed some things. And I remember going back to that school board meeting 2 or 3 months later, and there was over 100 people there. And, I remember, though, when I went to that larger meeting, being recognized by some of the folks who were on the that were on the school board and saying, "Hey, I remember you when you were when it was not popular to come to our meetings. I remember that you were attending." And so, again, I think it's important that when you're thinking about attending meetings, a lot of times it's consistency that's important. It's looking at the meetings that affect where you live, where you pay taxes, really makes a difference. And again, being a consistent face and a consistent voice is where you can really start to make a difference in these meetings. These same meetings provide ample opportunity for pro-equity community members to have their voices heard and make a real difference, like we just kind of said there. Attending these meetings can even open the doors, again, to potentially run as a board officer, to potentially serve on a committee, to potentially get involved. Again, there are public hearings, there are public committees that you can join in terms of providing public feedback, and again, getting more and more involved with the systems that affect our lives day to day. So, when you're looking to attend, there's a few things we want you to keep in mind. One is to learn about your local meetings. Check your municipality's website for information. Many of the meetings are recorded and available online. Take some time to review some past meetings to see, how the format is going, to see, maybe some of the dynamics of the folks that are on the board, and to look at some topics that you'd be interested in contributing to. Number 2 is to prepare a statement. Determine whether you want to speak. There's plenty of reasons to maybe show up to a few meetings just to get a vibe for it, and you may not want to speak at your first meeting, but other of us, may be more inclined to want to speak. If you decide to, make sure to check your municipality's website to determine the time limit of public comments. These are usually 2 to 3 minutes. And again, we have some tips on how to assemble a public comment, which we'll get into here in a second. Number 3 is to get ready for your first meeting. Consider bringing a friend or family member with you. Consider bringing somebody else who may be engaged, but also just thinking, especially in maybe some areas where there's hot button issues being discussed, you want to consider safety. You want to consider safety in numbers, but also the squeakier wheel often gets the oil. So if you have more people showing up, more people supporting, that can often help to support whatever you're there to talk about. We recommend arriving 10 to 15 minutes before a meeting starts. And once you're there, you're going to want to identify if there's a sign-up sheet for speakers. Now, this is not always the case, but a lot of meetings will have sign-up sheets that you have to sign up before the meeting starts in order to speak during the public comments. This is often next to where meeting agendas can be found, so they'll have a stack of meeting agendas, but you can always ask one of the either board members, or they often have a clerk there that you can ask how to sign up to do a public comment. With that in mind, you also want to make sure you're keeping your privacy in mind. Now, this is actually really, really important, and I'll tell a little bit of a personal story on why that is. When signing up for public comments, you're going to want to find the sign-up sheet for the address. Some meetings, again, they're going to ask for your address before providing a public comment. It's important to know that your address and statement become part of the public record, and so that could be accessed by anyone in the community. So consider potentially providing only the town in which you reside, or that you're a taxpayer of, or if you're representing an organization. So for instance, there was a school board meeting that I attended where I spoke in favor of LGBTQ students, as we are wont to do here at the OutCenter. And after the meeting, there was a not so reliable online fake news source who decided that they wanted to get the public record of who spoke at that meeting. I was then featured as well as our executive director, Mary Jo, featured in a article describing, all kinds of, very negative things about LGBTQ advocacy and folks who are here trying to, again, protect the rights of LGBTQ students. And they included a picture of my public comments card where I had put the OutCenter's address and my name. And on there, it's a picture of me and a picture of my social media profile, a picture of what he assumed was my address, with him then saying, this person is trying to, whatever they're trying to accuse us of doing when we're doing public advocacy. And, that was a very scary moment, that was an attempt to dox my address. He did not cross out the address. He did not try to blur the image. He was saying, hey, here's all these things that I'm accusing this person of doing, and here's his name, his picture, and his address. So again, when you're doing some of these public comments, it's important to remember that there are some not so great actors in our community. There are people who want to use fear and want to use, any platform they can provide to prevent pro-equity voices from speaking up. And so when you're doing these things, it's important, again, to keep your privacy in mind. Be mindful about the information that you make public. Also be mindful about whether your social media profile is public, or whether you kind of put some protections in and, private some of that so that your personal information is not out there for anybody. With that being said, number 5, I think, is also really, really important, and it is to intentionally build relationships. Stay a few minutes after and talk with local officials. Consider encouraging members who shared your point of view to continue to monitor the progress towards the calls to actions that you made in your public statement. Again, go out of your way to try to build that rapport, and try to again build those relationships with decision makers. Again, it's important for these board members, for these committee members, for these commissioners to see pro-equity voices, to know that those people are their constituents, and to know that you are going to be there and you're going to consistently be there, and that you are watching what they're doing, and that you are wanting them to continue to do good by students, to do good by their local municipality, or to do good in their agency or whatever institution they represent. So again, build those relationships with folks who attend these meetings, and again, build those relationships with folks who are, again, doing those meetings themselves, those board members, those commissioners, those clerks, and city officials as well. So that all being said, if you're looking to, again, deliver a public comment, we're going to briefly look over this sample public comment that we have here. This is a statement that we delivered to the Brandywine Public School Board in September 16th of 2024. Again, this was a little bit of a, again, response to some of the consistent concerns that we've had with Brandywine schools. But in this, we really wanted to highlight some of the basics that you can consider when putting together a public statement, because I know that can be overwhelming. You may feel like you have to put too much, or you may feel like you have 1,000 things to say, or you may think, I kind of want to just keep it simple. So with this, we kind of have a very baseline, very simple, easy to follow format that you can consider when wanting to give a public statement. So obviously you want to start with an introduction, including your name and impactful information. So that's going to be whether you're a resident of that area, whether you are representing an organization that has maybe some particular expertise on what you're addressing, your role or your history within the community. So being able to say at a school board meeting, I graduated from this school, or, I'm a resident of this community, or, being able to say, again, we recently had a situation in Dowagiac where they're addressing their mascot. And we had members of the Pokagon band come and, speak as representatives of folks who are part of the indigenous tribe here in Southwest Michigan and would like to see some of these things changed. And so there are ways to, again, look at what some impactful information could be as you are, beginning to introduce yourself to whatever body that you're speaking to. As we go down, the message body, make sure that your statement is focused and includes relevant research and data to support your position. Some contexts require heavy data. Some require heavy narrative and a strong, important narrative. Take time to consider what tactic is most likely to succeed in your context, and also, frankly, what type of message you're interested and, most able to deliver. So, again, kind of going back to the mascot example, there is some data that was really impactful that was shared during those public comments, but what was also really important is narratives. Being able to share a narrative saying, hey, it's, understandable that folks may have a connection to their history, but it's also important that we, create a welcoming and positive school environment for all students today, and when you're looking at like Brandywine examples, for instance, and all these other things, I think it's important to touch on personal stories, the heartstrings of the narrative. If you're a parent of an LGBTQ student, talking about maybe, again, in vague terms, some of the struggles and some of the situations that, you wish had been better for your student when you were, again, having them in school. Being able to speak as an LGBTQ person about some of the issues that you've faced when you're addressing a meeting. It's really, impactful when you can connect a personal story to some of these issues or some of these things that you're advocating for. That said, data is also really powerful. We have here some of the MiFi data. Here, I'll scroll up a little bit. Some of the MiFi data where, we're looking at 21.6% of Berrien County students who identify as LGBTQ. That's 1 in 5 students. So when we're talking about, a school that has 1,000 kids, we're talking about 200 students that need support, that need, resources, that need to be protected, that need to be thought of when they're putting together policy. And so, again, there's an incredible importance to creating emotional and personal narratives in these statements, but you can also, again, purely come at it from a data point of view and be able to still hit on a lot of those things. And so when you're putting together your statements, think on, what approach you want to do, or maybe, again, if you're going with somebody else, maybe one of you hits on some heavier data and one of you hits on more of a personal experience. So we've seen it really work well when there's a variety of approaches. One of my favorite things is I remember we were at a New Buffalo school board meeting and having some GSA students come up and speak. It was in support of their gender support plan policy that they ended up putting in their school handbook. And seeing the GSA students communicate directly with their board was just incredibly powerful. Again, being able to share that perspective of a student. Data is powerful, but again, the story of a kid from a kid is also really powerful. Connecting that then is, the why statement. Connect your message to the entity that you're speaking to, taking that time to reference their past actions. So again, saying, again, for this example, 21% of your students are LGBTQ. Now, here's what you're currently doing that's harming LGBTQ kids. Or here's what we would like you to do to make school better for LGBTQ kids. So connecting, again, now your expertise, connecting your data or your story to then, again, the practical, what are you here to talk about? Making that transition. And then closing, list calls to action. Now, this is actually really important. It's easy to forget that you need to list, what do you actually want them to do? What is a call to action? And it doesn't have to be a whole long list. It could just be one thing. But what would you like to see them do? And then close out your statement by thanking them for their time and and their continued service to the community. Again, it is something that, even when we disagree with certain public servants and certain public representatives, it's also important to, again, remember that they are people who are doing this for oftentimes no money or very little money, and oftentimes a lot of public pressure and pushback. And so, again, finding ways to build that rapport, and, one of those can be through just being like, thank you for doing what you're doing, or thank you for considering my statement, again, can start to soften when you're trying to build those relationships with folks. All that being said, I hope this was a way to hopefully at least demystify the process of going out and making a public statement. Again, it cannot be undersold how important having consistent pro-equity voices in these meetings, but it's also important to remember these are oftentimes not very long meetings. In the city that I reside in, our city council meetings are like 30 minutes. There are school board meetings that I've been to in and out within 30, 45 minutes. And there are some that obviously go much, much longer, depending on, again, if there was something big that happened. If there's a big event in the community where folks come out and there's a lot of public comments, you might have a longer meeting. But a lot of these meetings are less than an hour, and a lot of them are also available to watch online. And so I would just encourage you that as you're looking for ways to get involved, as you're looking for ways to get active in the community, to, again, consider these public meetings, consider getting out there to your, again, school board, library board, city council or commission, county commission, all these different things. There's just so much work that can be done. And again, accountability that's important to bring people's attention to. and finding ways that, as we're seeing attacks happen federally, there are ways to even connect what's happening there to here. So asking public officials, how they feel about potential federal fund freezes is a big deal and can help get maybe some folks on the record, but also connecting it again to the issues that are happening locally. So thank you for listening. Thank you for considering this. And again, we are so excited to see the activity that's happening in our community and the emboldening that we've seen among people in our circles and circles beyond our circles. Again, it has just been so incredibly exciting. And so please consider going out there. It's often thankless work, but I'll tell you what, there's something really powerful about being able to look back at, I went to 3 or 4 of these meetings, and at this most recent meeting, this big thing was passed that I've been able to lend my public comments to, that I've talked to my board members about, that I've advocated for. I still think back to that New Buffalo school board meeting with the GSA students that we were able to help the GSA students throughout the year, and then them putting together this and working with the administration and then seeing it all come together was incredibly powerful and incredibly exciting, and again shows us why we do the work that we do. So we encourage you, again, consider coming to these public meetings and consider getting involved. And if you want to get involved in other ways, again, please feel free to reach out to us at OutCenter.org. We have our comments at the bottom of each web page where you can reach out to us, or you can reach out to us at info@OutCenter.org. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe where you're watching this video, and share it on social media. Share it on your Blue Sky, on your Facebook, any place where you do things so you can spread the word on how folks can get involved here in your local communities. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day, and have a wonderful time getting involved in, again, your local communities.